This is going to be part one of creating some sparkling dangling earrings with Teexpert Resin. I got a lot to tell you, so let's get started. Hi everybody, it's Janet here from Moonkusser Art. I'm back to create with the Teexpert epoxy resin. This is a two-part epoxy. You mix it 1-to-1 by volume, equal parts, so it's really easy to mix. It's a great general use epoxy. And I also have one of their leveling boards here. This little tiny dot bubble in the center of the board tells you when you have your tabletop level and ready to go. So that's going to be important in this project. They give you a nice little wrench for adjusting the table legs underneath to make sure that it's level, but I've already done that. One of the other things I'm going to do, just to make sure I have a clean surface, I like to put down a sheet of wax paper. That way I don't worry if I drip a little bit. I can just pick up that wax paper and move on. We're going to be creating some earrings today. So I got started with doing some of these around the holidays, and you can see holiday themed colors there. I invested in buying some other molds. I went onto Amazon. I'll make sure that I click on or look in the description box. I'll have links to the molds that I ordered. They were very inexpensive. Bunch of different sizes and things like that were in there. So we've got those all set, ready to go. And I'm going to show you one other set of, I'll just leave them in the package there. That's a set that I made just the other day. I've been doing my trials behind the scenes, and I'm ready to share my information with you. So let's get started with getting ready. Now with Teexpert's resin, they give you these nice little, these are medicine measuring cups that you can get, but they give them to you with their resin when you get the kits. And I'm not going to need a lot of resin in this project. So let's get a little bit closer. You can see the markings here. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I find it difficult to read these markings when I'm filling the container. So this is my little secret trip. I like to give you guys tips that work for me. So I just take a marker, because I'm going to be doing, again, by volume, equal parts. So 15 millimeters of, not millimeters, milliliters, sorry, of the hardener. I always put hardener in first. And then 15 milliliters of the resin. I mark them with the black so that as I pour, I can see that measurement. As you're filling the cup, you tend to lose sight of the measurement marks, and this is how I find works well. So let's get that measured out. A couple of things before we go that I'm going to tell you. You need some measuring cups. I always keep some isopropyl alcohol on hand. I have paper towels on hand. I've got my stir sticks and my nitrile gloves. So those are all things you want to be really careful with. Protect yourself. Use your protective gear, okay? Let's get started. All right, so the resin is all batched up. It's very clear. You can see it has very few bubbles in there. But I wanted to bring it close. I don't know if you guys can see. It's so hard to see but on camera, but I can see it with my naked eye. You'll see small swirls through your resin when it's nice and clear. And that tells me I have to do just a little bit more stirring You don't want to see any swirls in there because that means it's just not quite mixed enough. So that's good enough. You can stir this very slowly, 3 minutes. You want to mix it together. And that's going to mean that you only have a few tiny, tiny little bubbles. So, because these are earrings, I'm going to take it one step further, and I'm going to put this into a separate plastic cup. Sorry if you hear the background noise, it's my husband decided to do laundry. So here's my other plastic cup. Now, I'm going to tell you why. Usually, if you're pouring something like a countertop or floor, you want to make sure that you don't have any unmixed spots in your resin. So transferring your resin to another cup is a good thing to do. Scrape all your sides down and get it all out and into another container. Now, I'm not pouring the floor with this. I know I said we're doing earrings. That's not for the floor. So I've gotten pretty much all the resin out of there and into this cup. What I need is a cup, now that I'm done measuring, that has room in it. And this one will give me the room that I'm looking for. All right. So now I'm taking you to the other side of the studio. Okay, we're closer to the laundry room. This is my vacuum chamber. So it's a really big, this is a 5-gallon bin here, and it's got my gauge on top. There's the vacuum there. So I'm going to do my best to get this all on camera for you guys. As I just take the lid off, and it's going to want to fall. Ooh. Stay put. Don't go anywhere. Bro, it wants to go away, or that way, or any which way. It just wants to go. There. Okay. So it's got this silicone mat in the bottom, and that's handy. And I'm going to place my cup right inside and in the center of that silicone mat. Hello. I've got lots of room around it. Get my lid. Ding. Put that back on. Want to look around my edge. See here I've got, well, it's hard to see because of the light, but there's a little bit of a lip edge. So you want to make sure that you place your lid so you don't see any of the lip edge. It wants to be under that ring of rubber, a rubber ring here. And I'm going to shut down this valve on this side. And then this one I'm going to open up. And I am going to turn on my vacuum pump. So I'm going to mute and play some nice music while this happens. Here we go. All right, so I've turned off that pump. You can see that it's got it just about as far as I can take it down with the pressure there. And now we're going to release the pressure. You're gonna hear a hissing noise. I'm gonna put this right here so you can see those last little bubbles on top as I release the air. All right, so there we go. Look at how pretty that looks. No bubbles in there. Gauge is back down to 0. That means I can remove the lid and get that resin out of there. Again, I'm trying to juggle here, so I'm going to put you guys down and we'll look at it over at the other table. And there you have it. No bubbles. Beautiful, crystal clear and ready to go. All right, let's get a look at the products I'm going to be adding into the resin. I'll be using the Martha Stewart. This is their Confetti, Turquoise, and Color Arts Resin Art. This is their Mermaid. It's really a nice, it's out of their Luster series, a beautiful turquoise color that we'll start using in this piece. All right, let's separate out some quantities of the resin. Small amounts, really. That's why I'm using the medicine cups again. We're going to start with adding the Martha Stewart Turquoise, the Confetti. I went off screen to get some of the glitter. I find if I do it over my table area, the extra fine pieces go airborne and I start contaminating my workspace, and the next day I do another project and I have turquoise glitter in it. So there's another tip. So just enough to coat that glitter. Now we're going to start adding the Color Art Resin Art. Again, this is from their Luster series. This is the Mermaid. This is a dry pigment, and I like that because it's shelf stable. The dry pigments you can keep on your shelf for a long, long time and keep going back and using it. You can see that it's going to just lift very easily up and on my stick and into the cup. Give it a few swirls. Now I'm probably incorporating some more air by stirring. This is actually sped up just slightly. So here I'm taking my time and I'm going to let that sit and let those bubbles rise and pop. So let's just place out the molds that I'm going to be using. I'm going to do several sets of earrings today. In order to get all the parts that I need to use several of the molds. Okay, and back to regular speed. I want to show you and have you really understand exactly what I'm doing here. So at regular speed, I'm just getting just a tiny amount of resin to sit on my popsicle stick, and then I'm letting it drip into these molds. I start working on the smallest parts of the molds first, because this is the stage that the resin is going to be its most fluid state. So it's already been about, I want to say at least 30 minutes since the time I originally batched up the resin and have started this process. The Teexpert resin has a very long work time, very long. And it's just great for this type of project when you need to do a lot of manipulation. Now, I am not filling these molds by any means. I'm just adding a small amount into the mold, and then I'm going to start working in other areas with it. So this is just the first step of getting some resin into those little tiny molds. And in warp speed mode, we just go around doing the same process to fill the molds that will be part of this project. All right, now this is going to be the fiddly part. I'm going to get a nice wooden toothpick, and they have a little bit of a flat head to them. They're really inexpensive. Picked them up, I think, at Walmart. And what I'm doing here is I'm just using the toothpick to very lightly, I'm not pushing down on the mold at all because I don't want to damage the mold in any way. I'm just very lightly using the toothpick to coax the resin into the little nooks and crannies. So there's the hole opening for these pieces, and I want to work that resin around. You can see that it kind of resists filling the silicone molds. That's because the resin doesn't want to stick to the silicone. But if you work it enough, it finally accepts it and you can get it to fill these areas. Takes time. It's the fiddly part. All right, we have the glitter. We're going to start adding that, again, very, very small quantities. So getting just a little bit on the popsicle stick and giving it time to drop off slowly and into the mold where I have placed a little bit of the clear resin. I'll use a toothpick to try to coax it off of there. Now if I were to just mix up all the resin with the glitter, I'd get bubbles in there, and in this method I found that I'm able to have a nice coating of the resin already in the mold, so I'm not going to get any bubbles right up against the corners or the edges, the lip edges of these molds. And that's all important for me when I'm creating these. So just again, using that toothpick, coax that drip to fall into that mold, because I want very small amounts of the glitter in there. If you put too much in, it overwhelms it, and I want that transparency for the light to come through these earrings. So just that much. All right, let's speed things up and get the glitter into all the pieces that I want them in. It just takes some time. I have a lot of patience. I don't know if this is a project for those of us that don't have a lot of patience. I'm going to add a little bit more clear resin into these ones and put in the glitter. All right, here we go. And now here I'm going to use the same method, adding in the turquoise pigmented resin, and then I'll go back around and add a little bit more of the clear to get the volume in those molds to be about, I'd say maybe 2/3 of the way full. Just going around, making sure that the glitter is floating nicely in those mold areas and using that extra clear. Okay, and back with my handy dandy toothpick. Now I'm going to do some designing. So I'm using toothpick, wiping it in a paper towel, and coming back to the mold again and pulling the color down into the clear areas. So this is what I do to create some interest, give some effects, as if the colors are bleeding down into these clear areas, leaving tendrils of the color, just kind of wisping carefully. Again, not touching the bottom, just dragging that color down into the clear areas and fixing the glitter a little bit where I feel needed. All right, it's the next day, taking off the dust cover, and that's what we've got so far. You can see by pulling the toothpick through the color at the end of the time where you can really manipulate your resin, it makes those strands stick. So I like that look a lot. And today we're going to finish filling up these voids. Right now, I don't know if I can catch it on camera. Let's try. Right now, when we look at it, you can see a cupping inside the mold. So what happens is the resin wants to come to the lip of the mold and kind of curl up at that point. So that means it's high at the edge and lower in the center of where the resin sits in the mold. So I want to fill those up. I'm going to add resin until it comes up and slightly overfills, but not running over the mold. So that's what I'm going to do now. I've already batched up some resin and I ran it through the vacuum chamber, so the bubbles are out. So I'm ready to start working with that. And let's go. Now just using my popsicle stick to carefully add drops of the resin. It's in a very liquid state, so it's very fluid and moving across all the pieces. I then go back and grab my toothpick and make sure that I work it completely to the edges on the molds. I don't want it to get almost there and then not quite be there when I take it out of the mold, so now's the time to give it a little bit of extra attention. All right, I'm going to bring you guys down in here because I want to try to capture what I'm talking about. So if you look at the light, how it reflects off of the top coat that I just poured on, you see you can pick up that rounding. I hope you guys can understand what I'm talking about here. It's just, it wells up. And you have to be careful and you have to add it very slowly, because if you try to fill it too fast, that's when it runs over the edges. All right? And these are tricky because you can't get the drips in. Those little side pieces going up to the top are so skinny that I have to coax it with that toothpick. And that's what, then it finally, once it has its spot of less resistance against the cured resin, the resin wants to automatically level and it'll flow and it'll stand back from those edges. So this one here, I can see, I'm going to get my resin. Maybe I can capture this for you guys. So this one right here is a little bit flat. You see that? All right, so I'm going to get my resin. I'm just doing little tiny bits on a stick, right? Because I just want to do a drop. Let's try to, oh, this is so hard to do this and film it. I'm just going to add a drip. And see now, see how it's rounded over. Just with one little drop. Now, it's just a little low, but I'm not going to try to do that holding the camera and having you guys, but I'm going to add like half a drip to that one. And that's all it'll need to get it to round over to the top. But now you can see how they all have that nice round over. That's what you want. All right. Makes for an easier job finishing these off, and it gives a much nicer look to your finished product. So that's all for that. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, good morning. Let's get that dust cover off. And let's take a look. Now that it's cured, I can pick these up and show you. See that round on those? That's what I was talking about. Let's pop a couple of these out and give you an idea of what we've got. Nice. I like the colors. Looks good. Come out really easy out of these molds. The molds are just wonderful for this. All right. Pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and remove some of these from their molds, or not some, but all, because they're all cured. And I'm going to take them outside, get some video of how they look in the bright light of day. All right, before I take these pieces outside, I wanted to show you something pretty nice. I'm happy with them. But I do have one where there's, try to move these out of the way so we get a better view. There. See that little, so that's just a little drip. And this is a seam opener from my sewing basket. And what I like to do is I use this just to clean up those little drip edges. You just run it along and boom, and it's gone. Nice and clean. It's a nice finished edge. So just like that, again, cheap little seam opener tool, very sharp inside there, razor sharp, and it cuts that off perfect. Okay, out we go. Well, it turned out that it was raining outside, so no bright sunshine for getting pictures, but I turned on the studio lights, set everything up, and got a couple of the pictures of these pieces. Now everything still needs to be assembled, and I'm going to do that in the following tutorial here on Moonkusser Art. I hope you enjoyed this session. Everything that I used today will be listed in the description box on the video, so if you're interested in the products and if I can get you a link to save you a little bit of money, I'm happy to do that. We'll see you here next time for part 2 and the hardware.